Mackenzie,
Lemar.
because we have not taken the time this week to discuss a new name, Novemberg rolls on. Loud, proud, week two. We're back and covering Catch Me If You Can, and obviously lots of lying in this film, lots of lies about this film, real life, fake, all this crazy stuff. But my question is, if you had to work a new job starting tomorrow, something you've never done before, and you had to fly under the radar of not standing out and people actually thinking you were capable of doing what you were doing. And I guess there should be a caveat here. It should be something that is skilled. Like you take home whatever salary you get from this job. So you're not allowed to pick
Yeah.
something that's super easy to do.
Yeah.
But what do you think? What do you think you would do?
I feel like I'm just faking it till I make it in my current job, but I was told that
That
that's against
imposter
the
syndrome?
rules, so I can't use that one. No. Let's see. I think this is the first thing that pops into my head. I haven't really fully fleshed this out, but the first thing that popped into my head was a mechanic, because I feel
Okay.
like it is pretty skilled and I can do a lot of the basics that would get me by. And in the age of YouTube, especially, I can look other shit up and figure out how to do it probably without calling too much attention to myself. I think, like, if I worked at a little, like a Jiffy Lube or something, I could.
I feel like 80% of Jiffy Lube is just oil changes.
Right.
So,
Like, I can do oil changes like that, like crank them out. I could work at brake check. Like, I can do all the brake jobs, So put me
and
at
then
a
at the
Jiffy
end, you
Lube.
just have to remember to ask, so do you want us to change this filter for you?
Do you want me to do your cabin air filter for
Yep.
$175? Yeah, I
Show
can
them how
rip people
dirty it
off
is.
with the best
Yeah.
of them. Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I think I could pull it off. I think I could pull that off for at least a hot minute. I mean, until there was like a big job, maybe, and even then, I've done some bigger jobs. Like I've done some transmission repairs, some engine rebuilds, and those are hard. Don't get me wrong, but like I muddled my way through them, so I feel like I could do it.
I didn't even think of how much you can do with YouTube these days.
Oh
This
God, you
is,
can learn everything. I mean, almost everything. You just stick in your car model and you go how to
Mhm.
do blah blah blah, and 90% of it you can figure out. That's been fun fact. Another like goal side project of mine is like a YouTube channel of like for women, how mechanics, like how to do basic repair jobs at home. Because a lot of women don't want to watch like dudes mansplain things to them. So at least I sure don't. So anyway, yeah, I feel like I could limp along for a while. There would probably be some job that outed me at some point for sure.
Nice. Very cool.
What about you?
Maybe it's just because I have Jurassic Park on the brain, but I feel like it's not too hard to be a paleontologist. You dig, you dust. Once you hit something, you dust it off. If a kid
Says the
comes
guy
around
who
asking,
couldn't think of a single fucking dinosaur in the Jurassic Park episode. He's
I
like, you know
found
what
one,
you
Tyrannosaurus
know what I
Rex.
could fake is being a paleontologist, and I know none of these terms.
But no,
You're just like you're side googling while you're digging, like
yeah, Google would help for sure. I would just look up different types of dinosaurs and be like, yeah,
Google
I
lens
assume
the
this
shape of the
is, yeah.
bones. Like I can figure this out.
Or my other favorite part of the job would be if a child speaks up and asks stupid questions, you can basically threaten physical harm on them. I like that
Yeah,
component of the
gotta have the
paleontologist
raptor
job.
claw on hand. But yeah,
Hmm.
for sure,
I
for
think
sure.
my real answer might be, though, there are so many damn coaches on NFL teams. There's so many assistant coaches, special
Yeah,
teams coaches, line coaches.
offensive
I
line,
feel
defensive
like I
line,
could fake one of those pretty easily. Like,
special
okay, the
teams.
guy's going to
That's
throw
the
the ball
one.
to you. Here's how you catch. Yeah, special teams. You kick
Nobody
it, go
knows
through
what
the
the special
uprights.
teams coach actually does. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you can plug right in there for sure.
Yeah. Meeting's over early, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. See you Sunday.
I'm just waiting for the inundation of comments we're about to get on our talking shit about the NFL. I love the NFL, guys. Don't come for me. Welcome back to We Drink and We Watch Things. I'm Mackenzie.
I'm Lamar.
And we are continuing Novemberg, I say with
Ooh.
hesitation and a little bit of disdain, but
Out of your
actually
mouth, you can't put it back in.
I can't put it back in. Spielberg month, Novemberg, with a hard left turn from last week. Catch Me If You Can. And I said it at the end of the ep last week, and I'll say it again. I think it's one of the many indicators of Mr. Spielberg's range. Very different film, and he does it Well, because of course he does.
Yeah,
But
I give
anyway,
him props for just variety after looking through even when we were selecting which 4 movies do we want to do this month, and it's
yeah,
just he does a little bit of everything. Even has his hand in with writing and producing and all that, obviously. But we watched
yeah,
Poltergeist during October, and he didn't direct that, but he helped write it and like oversaw the whole thing. And it's just
yeah.
he does these little things really well.
Yeah, he does have incredible range. He has things that he doesn't do great when he tries to, I think, face them head on. Like he can't
Yeah.
do it. I don't think he can play a straight comedy super well, but he does like incidental comedy really well, you know?
Yeah.
So this is one of those where like this is not a comedy, but it's super funny, you know? So
Mhm.
anyway, he does a really great job. But before we're already getting away with ourselves, what are we drinking today? I named this one, so I thought it was pretty punny. But what's in it?
It's a pretty good name. We'll get there. So it's 2 ounces of gin, 0.75 ounces of lemon, half an ounce of simple, 0.25 ounces of OJ, and then 3 dashes of orange bitters. You're going to shake that up, put it into a coupe, and then you're going to top it with Prosecco, which is one of your favorite go-tos. I know you love the bubbles. And what are we calling this?
This is a French 75 to life.
Very good play on words. Very
Thank
good play on
you.
words.
Thank you. I if y'all don't remember from this movie, France plays a role, hence why we're here. But I will also say, pro tip on this drink, I do love the bubbles, but if you don't want to waste a whole fucking bottle of bubbles for these, I get these little baby guys. And this
Ah,
is what I use for when I'm putting them in cocktails. So you can make a couple cocktails with this without like wasting a whole giant bottle.
smart.
This is the La Marca, which I really like. Please sponsor us. But there are other mini bubble bottles if you want them.
We're
So,
already saying like 80% of their name every week. So like
right?
we
Yeah.
should be sponsored already. We're doing
I
most of the work.
they're really behind.
Yeah.
So, anyway, cheers.
Cheers.
What's your review on this one? You weren't a fan because the other one because it had Aperol, which is
This one's
apparently
tasty. I like
the
this
nemesis.
better than the Jurassic Park cocktail. I think Aperol just, like I said, overpowers most everything it's in. For my taste buds anyway. I can never not taste it. This one I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think I like the topper with prosecco and not because like pro tip, yeah, you top it, you don't mix it in. You'll
It's also
blow
a
all your
Saturday
bubbles.
afternoon. It's a nice little Saturday sipper,
It's
not
a
too
little
strong, but
light.
almost like a brunchy type beverage.
Yeah, it is kind of brunchy. That's true. It's nice. And I'm not a huge gin person. And this is where we got to call out Craft World again, Skylar,
Hmm.
because he's the only person who I trust to make me gin drinks. I'm not saying that other people don't do it well, but it's so inconsistent where I can just taste way too much of the gin. And this, like for you with the Aperol, like when gin overpowers something for me, it's almost ruined. But these are always like on point. All right, homies. So this is what's the verdict on a spoiler free versus not for this one? I feel like not. It's
I think
22 years old.
not. I guess
Yeah.
we could make there would be a couple even before we get into the cast and the crew. Like all I will say before we get to spoiler territory is that I think for me, when I first saw this, a lot of the appeal was that it was based on a true story, right? This guy, Frank Abagnale Jr., and
Yeah.
his book and his experiences. And then,
Inspired by a true story.
yeah, I guess that's a
Important distinction.
yeah,
Yeah.
better way to put it because in I think 2021 was when it came out that nearly every con that he talks about in his book was exaggerated, embellished, or completely made up. Not
Or
to
didn't
say
happen. Yeah.
that he wasn't committing bank fraud and that he wasn't in prison and
Yeah.
even locked up in foreign prisons. That stuff happened, but
Yeah.
that takes something away from me when I rewatch this because I think some films do lean heavily on the fact if you found out the social network wasn't true at all, I don't think it's as good of a film. Like it's still compelling in some ways and
Yeah.
entertaining. If you found out Molly's game was not true in any and it was just like, oh yeah, I hosted 2 celebrity poker games. That's all that really happened. That
Right.
takes away from me from and I tried to watch it this time and just watch it as fiction. And it's still entertaining, still witty, still great character work by DiCaprio and Hanks, but that I'm going to have a hard time rating this one strongly just because that took away my enjoyment from the film. Just saying that up front.
Yeah, I love this movie. I have
Okay.
always loved this movie. It's a great time, but asterisk. I have not rewatched it since I became aware of a lot, like how much of it was false. We knew a lot of it was embellished. We knew like the relationship with his dad was embellished and things like that. Some of those things were already known, but the degree to which it had been fabricated was not clear until very recently, and I had not rewatched it since. And I will say, same here, that took away from this on rewatch for me as well, because I just kept being like, that's not true, and that's not true. I think if you
Hmm.
went into this not knowing a thing about it and you had never ever known that it was based on or inspired by a true story, then it's a great
Yeah.
film. It's just a
Yeah.
good time. It's really well done. But yeah, I think it is kind of hard when you go on the roller coaster of this is inspired by this real person and he exists today and all these things are true about him and blah 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 blah. And then you go, yeah, through this roller coaster of realizing a lot of it's not.
And none of that's on Spielberg, by the way.
No,
Like I
the
said, this.
filmmaking is independent of that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten into what's the release year on this? 2002.
2002. Yeah.
So yeah, this stuff didn't come out until 3 years ago. This is a
Yeah.
2-decade-old film, so none of this is on Spielberg, and I'm not going to critique him at all today. I like to compare this while rewatching it. I went, this is kind of like a early PG-13 version of Wolf of Wall Street. It's like kind of what Leo would go on to do, of playing this sort of hateable, but like sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Scrappy individual.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think Wolf of Wall Street eventually perfected on that, and I don't know how much of that is made up, exaggerated, embellished, but I feel like that does it a little better.
It's very there's a good amount of embellishment there as well, but the bones are correct. I think I agree. Like I think it's interesting that Leonardo DiCaprio plays the character throughout from a time where he's supposed to be very young and he looks very young, and then as he ages he still always looks young, but he looks a
Yeah.
little bit older. And I think it helps you at least tethered to the fact that he started doing this was when he was a kid, and you feel a little bit more empathy for him.
Yeah.
But I agree, yeah, it is a kind of like a Wolf of Wall Street phase 1 kind of character for him.
And props to
Well,
that dude for, like, I think that's the ultimate con, right? Like, I lied about these things about lying, and I
yeah,
made millions
that's
off of it. Good on him. That's
that
what
was
a
going to be
con
my
man
next
does.
point of like, does that actually end up complementing the film in
I
some way
suppose
that
so.
he took us all for a ride again?
Yeah.
And also that he does own this firm and is a specialist in
Hmm.
these areas. And like, he's just a con man and he's gotten away with most of his life doing the same thing over and over. So, anyway, we'll get into it. But yeah, let's do some basics. Turn around, don't drown. It's spoiler time. Catch Me If You Can, like we said, 2002. The ratings are very high. The IMDb is 8.1 out of 10. And the critics have it at 96%. And the audience has it at 89%, which I think is pretty fair analysis on the whole, the watching experience and the production experience and all of that. Kind of in alignment with, I think where I would have been on first watch, especially too. So I think it kind of makes sense. Obviously directed by Mr. Steven Spielberg, which, and as we said last week, if you didn't hear, we're not going to list his entire filmography every single week. There's too much. We're going to just mention a couple as we go. So some of his that you may not remember off the top of your head are Lincoln. I think that's one that is like was a big release, but
Daniel
also people
Day-Lewis, yeah.
don't always remember him for it. They remember Daniel Day-Lewis more than
Yeah,
anything
I
else.
didn't
I think
see it. I heard it was
it
good,
was
but very long.
very well done and very long. Yes, exactly. Saving Private Ryan is another long one.
I feel like you're also subtly, because we don't typically announce our whole release schedule in advance. So by naming these, I feel like you're subtly, people are like, oh, they're not
What
going to do Saving
is
Private
missing?
Ryan.
I sure am. Thanks for picking up on
You
that. That
got
is
it.
what I'm doing every week. Let's see what the people guess. Maybe we'll have a poll on Instagram and be like, what are we going to cover?
I'm a
Well, we
little
have
bummed we're not doing Saving Private Ryan, but that is a good one, and that is
but
just, yeah.
I mean, fun fact, guys, while we're on it, while we're talking about it, we nixed that one because we felt like it's so good that it would be hard to find flaws with it. Not that there are none, but that there would it'd be hard to find flaws on rewatch. And
Not like that piece of shit Jurassic Park.
not that piece of shit Jurassic Park that we loaded on. No, we just thought like it maybe wouldn't make for that interesting of an episode.
It's also, and like, I think to your point of, you've said before that there's lots of people have said a lot of things about Saving Private Ryan, and
yeah, it's one that's been talked about a lot, and for good reason, for sure. But we're trying to do ones that we don't think are talked about quite as much. So
we also hate Matt Damon.
we also hate Matt Damon. Fuck that guy. Just kidding. I love Matt Damon.
Have you
Anyway,
done any Matt Damon films?
I don't think we have, other than like we've adjacent referenced him a lot. Like we referenced him talking about The Martian. We've talked about Good Will Hunting. We've talked about his cameos in the Marvel movies, but we've never done any of his actual movies.
So far, my theory holds up.
Yeah, I think we need a Matt Damon month. Come on, he's great. So we'll get there, guys. But real quick, the writers on this, obviously, Frank Abagnale Jr.'s source material is credited as part of the writing. He did that with Stan Redding. That's when you need a book chaperone to help you write a book because you've never done it before, folks, for those of you who don't know. And then Jeff Nathanson is the screenplay here. So he adapted that novel and he changed a few things in concert with Steven Spielberg. Like Steven Spielberg wanted some not major, but like impactful story changes, like the relationship with his father being ongoing and him coming back to visit him and continually writing him and things like that. That was Steven Spielberg felt like that relationship being a through line was important. So that some of those edits were made in the screenplay process for sure.
And Jeff Nathanson hasn't done a ton. I mean, he's done some, and he tends to work with Spielberg. Like he did The Terminal, he did one of the Pirates of the Caribbeans, but it was one of the later like Dead Men Tell No Tales, I think, which not a lot of people saw. And then he did the 2019 Lion King, which I thought was interesting.
Which was like real bad.
I didn't see it. And he also has done like some random sequels. I forget what the franchises were, but he did a lot of number 2 in action films, which doesn't, to me, lend a lot of credibility to
well on him. Yeah. We don't need it to be great. We just need a warm body. Like just write.
It sounds to me, based on what you said, that it was basically just like Steven Spielberg was like, I don't feel like typing this. You over there,
you go fix this.
Make
Here
these
you
changes.
Go.
Yeah.
Well, I will say too, like The Lion King was real bad because Beehive don't come for me, but like Beyonce is not an actress. Like, can we just put that shit to bed? Like, she's not here. She should not be acting in things. Like, she can sing. She's incredible at producing films, like works of art in her long form music videos, but she is not an actress. And she was like bad in an animated film. Like, that's saying a lot, I think, to be bad in that. And just on the whole, like the CGI and all this stuff was like, I just didn't think it was well done.
We're currently at a 5.0 rating on Spotify, and we are going to get
fucking shredded. Yeah. Well, it doesn't, again, Beyonce is great, but she's not perfect. Like, can we have one thing that she can't do well? Because I think this is the thing. I think we found the thing. Anyway, I love her. She seems great, but not for that. Moving on to our major cast and crew before I get us to a 1 star on Spotify. Leonardo DiCaprio is our lead here, Mr. Frank Abagnale Jr. He has done so many fucking things. Like, this is a Spielberg moment in and of itself of like, what do I even list? But he, of course, is famous for Titanic, The Aviator, Wolf of Wall Street, which you mentioned, The Departed, Shutter Island, which I think is a fun, like, not his most famous film, but a really good one of his. What's Eating Gilbert Grape? Like, I could go on and on and on. He's done a million things and he's just fucking great.
And this one comes at an interesting time where it's 5 years post Titanic, because he was already pretty famous in the early 90s with Gilbert Grape. And then it sort of, he grew, did Romeo and Juliet, did Titanic in 97. Yep. And then I don't know if there was a backlash or if he was just hesitant to take role, because I think he only did 1 or 2 other movies between that and this. Yeah. And then this and Gangs of New York come out in the same year. And from then on, Leo is fucking everywhere and has killed it for the last 2 decades.
I think he has said before, I could be misremembering this, but I feel like I heard something about this way back, of just like he needed a break because Titanic was such a behemoth, not only as a project, but, you know, the media frenzy and the obsession about it was really profound. And he was just like, I need to take a fucking breather and get out of the limelight. And then, he came back with 2 winners right in a row. Like, honestly, incredible stuff. So he's awesome. Another awesome gem, America's Dad, Mr. Tom Hanks, makes an appearance as Carl Hanratty. And he, of course, again, has done a gazillion amazing things. Forrest Gump, Green Mile, Castaway, Philadelphia, which I don't know if that's a deep cut, but I feel like I don't know a ton of people have seen it. And if you haven't, you should. Also recently in Elvis, Sully, all kinds of things. He's just done fucking everything.
I didn't like Elvis. Did not enjoy Elvis.
I know we've talked about this. I feel like that's one we need to do on the pod because I loved Elvis and I feel like we should hash it out. But his character is very interesting in that. And he's a really divisive character in that. So, but I love that he plays so many different things. He has such range.
Did you read the deets about the original casting plan for this and why Tom Hanks wasn't even supposed to be in this originally?
Yeah, he was asked kind of at the last minute, and so Spielberg didn't want to ask him. He just thought this is too small of a role for someone with the tenure and experience of Tom Hanks. And Tom Hanks basically told him, he was like, listen, a good role is a good role. And this is a great role. He is.
Yeah, it's not as though he's a supporting character. He's the
Yeah.
second main, like it's a
I mean, he's
two-person
technically
job.
a supporting actor, but he is integral to the story.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't happen without him,
Facts. So it's interesting. The original casting plan was to have Johnny Depp was Spielberg's first choice for the
I know.
DiCaprio role in this, but they ended up going with Leo. However, Gangs of New York was filming at the same time. That got delayed in shooting, and they
Yeah.
had cast James Gandolfini
Yep.
to play the Tom Hanks role in this, but because of that delay in shooting, he couldn't do it. He had to get back onto the set of The Sopranos, and I feel like that's a
Yeah.
good alternate history of
Yeah.
how different would things be if James Gandolfini had played opposite Leo in this.
And I think he's the wrong guy, actually. And I don't say that just because of Tom. I say that because he brings fundamentally a very different energy than not just Tom, but like it seems like the Carl Hanratty character. Because if you read about it too, people are like, if you saw the guy that this is based off of, Tom Hanks had found footage and like figured out how they're like, it's like seeing him move. It's like seeing the same guy. And I just think James Gandolfini, while a great actor, brings with him a very specific persona that is just not the same. And I don't think that would have translated here as well.
I think, yeah, you're right. I feel like this could have been a breakout role for him, though, to break out of that mold of like, he's not only Tony Soprano, because I mean, he did some film
But
work
would
after
he have?
Sopranos.
Because I've seen him, like, did you see The Drop? He's the same fucking guy. Like,
Mm-mm.
he's in, and again, it's not that it's not actually that he's playing the same guy and the same character. It's that he as a person has a baseline. And I think his baseline is fundamentally different than this one. And not that he should only ever be cast as a mobster type. I don't mean that. I just mean this domineering persona, this very strong character, this bulldozer type. Like, I think all of those kinds of things just come with him as a person. And Tom Hanks has the ability to take a step back and play it a little bit more straight than that, I guess is kind of what I'm saying. It's not that I think he would read as a mobster. I don't mean that. I just
Fair
think
point.
he would interact with other people in the scenes so much differently is all.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think that would have been a very interesting, like you said, alternate history. And yeah, maybe it would have been one of those moments where we see an actor like really upend their typecasting. Who knows? Another one who is always just playing himself, Mr. Christopher Walken, Frank Abagnale Sr. He has, of course, incredible filmography as well. But I think there again is just this through line of like, it's Christopher Walken, he played the Deer Hunt. He was in Deer Hunter. He was in Seven Psychopaths, which if you haven't seen
Seven Psychopaths
is so fucking good. And I think like not enough people have seen that. So if you haven't seen it, see it. It's great. He's great in it. Blast from the Past. This is a weird deep cut, but I include it because he says,
Fraser.
yeah, but he says something. We'll get there, but like he says the same line in both movies. And then Sleepy Hollow as the Headless Horseman, and then Ants as Cutter, which we've talked before about like Ants versus Bugs Life, and I was like an Ants kid, and he was in Ants as Cutter. Did you have any other Christopher Walken faves?
I think I will
There are
always,
so many.
from a comedy perspective, I will always love his role in Joe Dirt. It's such a dumb comedy film, but he in it is incredible. And then Man on
Why
Fire.
am I having deja vu about that? Have we talked about that before?
Did we talk about Joe?
About
I feel
Joe-
like we did reference a joke or something in it, but I don't recall what episode.
I don't know if it was
about
Christopher Walken or not. Sorry. Anyway,
Yeah,
I just had a deja vu moment.
But yeah, Man on Fire with Denzel Washington. He's got a really small part in that, but I think he played. But I mean, so what you said earlier, like, yes, we're always going to see Christopher Walken, who has this very interesting, unique delivery. But in this, I think he gets a couple of really compelling monologues where he gets to show off more of his acting chops. So I think this was one of the ones where I went, oh shit, Walken's a pretty good actor.
Yeah, I think that's true. He gets a little bit more material here than is typical. Kind of like his monologue in Pulp Fiction, where he like gets a good stretch to talk and not just be a shtick of himself, the way that he talks and his cadence and all that. I feel like sometimes in certain films, not all, they just sort of put him to work in that way rather than really,
Yeah,
like you
I
said,
would
letting him
actually go
act.
the inverse there. I would think that Pulp Fiction's a perfect example of we need this person to deliver this very void of emotion monologue where it's this kind of insane story, but it's getting us to this backstory on this character and how this watch and how it got there. So I feel like that's, to me, in my
Well,
head,
I don't
the
mean his
most
devoid of
watching.
emotion thing. It's just like his cadence, the way that he
Yeah.
talks is what people like put him to work for. And I
Yes.
feel like in Pulp Fiction, though, like that contextually made a lot of sense, right? Like it tells you a lot about this person and this character. It's not just this type of delivery for the sake of this type of delivery, is what I mean. And I
Yeah.
feel like they put him to work in so many movies where like he's just kind of the joke, he's kind of part of the joke of himself is his presentation and his delivery. And I like that he doesn't do that here. You're totally
No,
right.
not in
He
this. I mean, there's a scene I'll call out later where he nails it. Fucking nails
Yeah,
it.
totally. Martin Sheen, another great gem of a person, plays Roger Strong. He's an interesting character here. We'll get to him, but he's been in a bunch of things. He did The Departed. He was in Badlands. He's known most famously, I think, historically for Apocalypse Now, and of course The West Wing, which he was on for a bazillion years as President Bartlett. And yeah, he's a fun one.
I wrote down that this is 4 years before him and Leo did The Departed together, but I want to segue that into, why do you think this is the only movie that Leo and Tom Hanks have ever done together? Is there anything to that?
I don't know that there's anything to that. That would be interesting, an interesting rabbit hole to go down, but they don't interact a ton on screen here.
Right.
There's not a lot of them in the same room at the same time. So I don't think it would be anything as far as clashing on set or anything like that. And maybe they just didn't jive because they just spend so little time together, I think, on the whole. But I also think like Spielberg brought them together and maybe he just needs to bring them together again. Because Tom Hanks is like practically Spielberg's muse,
Yeah.
at this point. He
Yeah.
puts them in everything. So I think they could bring them together more because, yeah, they're a real powerhouse. Again, even though they're not on the screen together as often, they play off of each other so well, even over the phone,
Yeah.
in this application. It's just, yeah, it's very well done. Also we have Nathalie Bay, who is Paula Abagnale. She's probably not super well known to most American audiences. A lot of her work seems to be like French film. But she's done Lawrence Anyways, An Affair of Love, and then she also appeared in Downton Abbey, which maybe people might know her for a little bit later on. And then finally, Amy Adams, who this is a little bit earlier in her career. She's I wouldn't say like she's a breakout at this point. She's known, but she's not like a breakout star. She plays Brenda Strong, and she since then has done some incredible stuff. Arrival, which I personally love.
Really liked her.
That is surprising. We need a sidebar on that, Mr. I Hate Sci-Fi. American Hustle, Enchanted, The Fighter, Man of Steel, Julia and Julia. Like she's another one of those actresses who I just think has such range, and she's been nominated for 27 fucking Oscars, and I don't think she still hasn't won.
She's young.
But yeah, but she's incredible.
And even with braces,
Even with
she's
braces,
got the
but hey,
range.
they come off, and I love that he's like, no, I think your smile looks great with braces. And I'm like, boy, you lying. Like nobody, I had braces for years. Nobody loves a braces smile. Like it is not.
I thought you were going to. Did we give a spoiler warning already? We did, right?
We did.
Yeah, I thought you were going to when she gets them off, and she's like, "I keep rubbing my tongue over my teeth, like all up in his face," and it's just like,
I know, girl. We'll get to that scene too, and the direction she was given in that scene was a good time. But music, I gotta say it again. I did this last week. I will do it again. Mr. John fucking Williams, as usual, just wrecking shop. It is so good, and it is so different. Like if you want to just compare Jurassic Park and Catch Me If You Can as far as scores and music styles, like this is more jazzy and like higher energy. So like it's just a very different feel to this score, and he again just crushes it.
It's scored to me almost like a 70s like
a spy
thriller. Yeah,
I think that's intentional.
Like that. It's a lot of little low horns and a bit of jazz to it. I dig it.
It's like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and James Bond had a baby, and like this is what came out, and it's as far as score, and then even stylistically speaking, like Man from U.N.C.L.E. is very similar in that, stylistically speaking, and I mean the series as well as the film. So
In this
just
situation, though, where do they have a surrogate? The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and James Bond. I'm confused about the science.
We'll talk about it later. It
Okay,
gets really
okay. After the
complicated.
pod, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
afterward. Okay, so we're gonna get into a quick plot summary. Barely 17 yet, Frank is a skilled forger who has passed as a doctor, lawyer, and a pilot. FBI agent Carl becomes obsessed with tracking down the con man who only revels in the pursuit, which I think does become a really important theme. Both of those, like Carl's obsession and his need to just be chased. You know, like Frank wants to be. This is how he's getting attention. This is how people are engaging with him, and he's hooked on the chase. I think is what
and
it becomes.
I mean, when we get to the last line of the film, that tells exactly what you're saying. So
Yeah, totally. Very quick production note. This was a $52 million budget, and it made $352 million in theaters in its theatrical run, which is, I think, very impressive for a non-actiony, Spielberg flick. It's not Indiana Jones, it's not Jurassic Park. It's a character story, and it still drew people out because it was so well done.
yeah, it's interesting that they have sort of throughout this the parallels of him and James Bond, and we talked about spies. He's not that. He's a con man, but the way that they weave that story and make it interesting, where there's not a lot of action beats, but it's him just having these semi-tense interactions where you're not sure if he's going to give himself away or not. And it's honestly pretty low stakes when you think about the reality of the situation, but it's still
Right.
really entertaining to see.
Yeah, and I think the thing with this one is that it is very intentionally an homage to those things, right? And he even acknowledges as a character his own obsession with those things. I mean, you see him wanting to dress like James Bond. He is likening himself to James Bond, and he gets the suit and he gets the car and he does all the things. And I think it's also indicative of his youth at this point, right? To now, he has been playing a game. He has been playing dress up, and he's not taking it seriously. And you hear him say things along those lines multiple times where he does not fully understand the gravity of the situation. And this is all, he's conning himself because he's treating this like it's a game of role play or dress up. He even says at one point that he's Mr. Fleming to his tailor.
Taylor doesn't fucking read.
And the tailor doesn't read because he has no fucking reaction. And I'm like, James Bond, hello, the suit. Anyway, and like he literally asked him to make the James Bond suit, and the fucking tailor is just like over his head.
Who writes them.
No idea. But I think, it just speaks to how detached from reality he is, which I think can be early on, especially very much likened to like, he's a kid, he's a fucking
That's
kid.
what I was going to say. Attribute it to the youth of how invincible we all feel when we're that young.
Yeah. He just has not understood the gravity of everything that he's done. But I think from the very top, like you get that tone of levity and cartoonishness with the title cards. They're beautifully done, and they're their own story in their own right. Like it literally acts out the sequence of the film, but it does it in a way where like you don't know the story yet, especially on the first watch, you don't know the story yet, but it's so engaging, and and like the music follows it so well. And I think again it likens it all to kind of a game, and I think that plays out in the film.
Yeah, I might be misremembering this, and this might be the first one that did it, but I feel like the aughts had a stretch where like a lot of like sequences for opening credits were animated, and maybe they were all ripping this off, but it felt like that became a thing for about a decade, where like every fifth movie you saw had sort of these interesting animated sequences. But I do like how it spins out of that. To your point, it sets a tone. We go right into this game show situation of them trying to guess who's
Again,
the real
another
Frank
game.
Abagnale. Yeah, and I like that it jumps from the intro to that to then this framing device of him being arrested, and then we sort of spend the rest of the movie jumping back and forth in time.
Yeah.
I think it sets up the plot really well.
And just taking a quick step back to the titles, like to your point where you're like, there's trend of animated title cards. This is a James Bond trend. Like this is
Mhm.
how James Bond titles open. And so it's again like harkening back to that. I think it's telling you in so many ways, in so many words, what this is gonna be. It's gonna
That's a
be a
good call.
twist on a
Yeah.
James Bond story. It's gonna be a twist on this game and this chase and this, especially the chase aspect of it. And I think it's subtle. Like I think that's not super obvious the first time through, but it all comes together to make this really cohesive theme. And I do like that it opens with the game show. The only thing that kind of bugs me about that, and these are one of the few marks against this film for me, one is that it drags a little bit,
Yeah.
and two, that it doesn't come back to that ever. And that is one of the few things that is absolutely true, did happen. He did make this appearance. And so I just wanted more of that. Like just, even if it was just interspersed snippets of that, like where we jump back and forth, because you do see a little bit of this time jump here and there. I wanted to just see that like after this is all said and done, how does this guy behave on this show? Because you don't really get that footage. You don't get very much of that footage, and you get that one question that one time, and it just feels like a loose end that's never tied up for me.
Yeah, it's a prologue, but doesn't really. You don't know that that's what it is,
Right.
and
And it
because it
was,
never
to be
comes
fair, the
back
last thing
around.
filmed. Like it was an add-on thing. It was not
Okay,
part of the
okay,
original screenplay and script. So it like kind of makes sense. But
got
yeah,
it.
I guess if you treat it like a prologue, it kind of works. It just, I don't know that it was necessary. It was interesting, but I don't know that it was necessary unless you were gonna do something more with it, I
They
guess is what I'm
probably
saying.
could have. They have, I think, 3 questions that get asked, or even just 2 questions that get
Right.
asked of the different Franks on stage, and maybe they could have set up the story a little more if they had probed a little bit more to get more of this insight to the character before we get into what we actually end up seeing in the past.
I just wish you got the moment where the actual contestant picks the wrong Frank Abagnale. Like even if that's the only thing we came back to, because that's what happened. She picks the wrong one. She doesn't guess that it's him.
You probably could have
And
closed the movie with that, honestly.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, because isn't that like closing, isn't that putting on a bow the con,
Mhm.
right? Like that he, like, this is the con that he can get away with this even now. Like people don't know who he is. And yeah, I would have liked to have seen like, yeah, a little bit more of a bow to that little bit. But I do think it's an interesting opening on the
Yeah,
whole.
I do. We quickly get sort of established after that of who this character is, who his parents are, the influences in his life. And I know this is, I don't want to spend today going back and forth to how his life really was, how the book, what he said it was, how the movie ends up portraying it. I'm just going to stick to what the movie says. But in this, his dad is a bad influence. Like we can tell that his dad is also very
Yeah.
savvy. He's street smart. He knows how to get what he wants out of people, but he's not great with money. He's in trouble with the IRS. He's losing his business. And so we see this really quick fall from grace. But I do
Very quick.
enjoy,
Very
like
quick.
immediate in the first 5 minutes. It's like, oh, well, now we don't have a house. You think
Wow.
his
He's on
life is
top of the
great.
world. And
He's
then
getting this award. Yes. But when he goes to the public school and that scene where
oh
he
my
decides
God.
to just impersonate the substitute teacher just because it's like, con man gonna con man, that scene to me, more than anything else in like Leo DiCaprio from when he started until 2002, I think encapsulates what he would become acting wise. He just goes balls to the wall on that one sequence, embraces this teacher role, the confidence that he dismisses the other substitute that shows up. You look at things where he portrays in like Django Unchained and The Departed and all these other roles he would eventually take. And I think more so than Titanic or Gilbert Grape or any of those, I think that little classroom sequence really does show a lot of his range.
Totally. I mean, I think it's such a, it makes you immediately think of like, oh, I wish, right? Like, but he has the balls to do it. And I'm not even like, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily turn out well. But imagine being able to get that revenge on this, jock that just slammed you into a locker by
Right.
just having the skill set to walk into a room with the confidence that he does and fucking take over.
Yeah.
And it's such a cool, fun energy. And it's a good illusion to what he will do later. And that all you need is a good story and a little bit of confidence, and you can take over the world,
Act like you're supposed to be here there.
Yeah, just like like you said something jokingly about the imposter syndrome at the top. Like I'm not kidding when I say like everybody has those moments where you have to fake it till you make it. Like there have been so many times where I have gotten on client conversations or given a talk or given a speech or a performance or whatever it is. And I've just been like, you gotta just own it. You may not feel it, but you just gotta own it. And he does that. Like he just comes in and he owns it. And that's why so many people are enraptured by him and
And then
believe him.
when he gets caught, I love the line of, he's been doing it for 2 weeks and he was planning a trip to
He was
like
planning
Trenton,
a
New
trip to a
Jersey.
fucking French bread factory in Trenton, New Jersey. And I was just like,
Trenton, New Jersey. And then right after that, his dad just chuckles with him. So again, he just has a bad influence in
and
his
you get
life.
no indicator that there are any repercussions, right? Like his
Right.
mom just shakes her head and she just moves on. She's a very like hands-off mom. You can tell. She
Yeah.
reminds me a lot of my grandma with my dad. Like she was very like, you'll turn out fine. Like, I'm not worried, And this is that same energy. And I think maybe might have been of the time too, like era based or just parenting of like, if you haven't killed someone or done something terrible, then I'm like not going to get involved and I wish you the best. And that's the
just
energy
be home before the streetlights go out. That's
right. And like, that's the energy that she gives. And then he gives the energy of like being a fan. You know what I mean? Like he's like a fan of his son. He's accepting the Rotary Club award and he wants his son to stand up, but he wants them to applaud him. And he's like, right here in the front row, my son, like he's so proud of him as his baseline, which is both beautiful and problematic because it yields this hyper confident person who has had no repercussions to date and then just goes and fucking wrecks shop and does this. And you even like, I agree. I don't want to go back and forth about what's real and what's not real, but one of the things that he says, or when he's been interviewed about this, is that what a great man his dad was. And he says like that that the movie gets it right finally, like on the edit of like treating him like he's a better guy, and that there are previous stories or iterations or something that were like misrepresenting what a good man his dad was. And he's like, and here you get to see what a good man he was. And I was like, do we? Like he has such a warped perception, I think, even of who his dad was, because I do feel like there's some truth to that dynamic.
Well, if you want a not so fun parallel of that, go listen to our Iron Claw episode and how
oh my God,
the brother from that is like same thing. My dad was a good man. Was he?
Yeah. Like, have you romanticized this in some way? And I'm sure you, especially like just for survival's sake, you kind of have to some degree. But when you have gotten away with con after con after con and your dad was a fan, like maybe that's your take, That was crazy for me.
You mentioned when he started, I like that the impetus is kind of, his parents are getting a divorce. Again, his life is kind of falling apart and they're trying to keep this facade in front of him, but eventually they can't anymore. And that's when he runs away and starts on all these sort of schemes. Yeah. And I like that with his initial attempts at bank fraud of like forging these checks and like trying to get money, like just he's doing it for the thrill and I think to kind of avoid what's waiting for him at home. I like that they don't work out initially. Like he does take some trial and error of figuring out how to gain people's trust and why it's not working.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, that because not every con works. I mean, truly, like con men will tell you that they have. There still is some trial and error. And I think what's interesting, and she says this actually in the game show part of like, you're clearly a skilled, smart guy. Like, why did you not go just get a real career, like do a real thing with the dedication and effort you gave to this? And we see it. We see him, like you said, trying, then trying and trying. With the dedication and effort that you gave this, why didn't you just go be amazing at a real job?
That's your point. He passes the bar exam.
He passed the bar exam.
That out that he could have been a lawyer.
That's the thing is, it's like, it's not about the skill set for him at a certain point. It's not about, should I have this actual career? It's, can I convince you? Mm-hmm. Can I con you? The satisfaction isn't in doing the thing well. The fake job well, being a good lawyer or being a good pilot. It is, did I convince you that I was this thing? Did I trick you the right way? And he doesn't see it as harmful. He sees it as an accomplishment. And he you even see it reflected in the way he writes his letters to his dad, right? He's like very proud of himself. He's like, I'm a pilot now and they tell me I'm doing great and all these things. And he's proud of himself, but he can't write into words the real thing that he's proud of, which is I convinced them. I got
Yeah,
them.
I do. Yeah, I think that's a good call because I did write down that the letters to his dad give this really good through line for the film, and
Right.
because it is not it's not like Wolf of Wall Street where literally the narrator is telling us everything that's happening. We don't get that in this, but we get kind of hints of it, and we can kind of laugh where we see what he's really doing. But these letters to his
Right.
dad, he's saying, Dad, I have decided to stop being a pilot and now I'm gonna be a doctor.
I'm going
And
to
it's
be a
just,
doctor and now I'm
yeah.
going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be all these things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the thing too is that, like, again, we got to keep coming back to the fact that he's a kid when this happens, which is the impetus for this is that his parents are getting divorced and they want to force a choice. Who are you going to live with?
Yeah.
And the lawyer comes in and says, like, this is not a test. This is not a trick. There's no wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
And as having been in this exact situation as a kid, I can tell you that that is 100% not true. There is a wrong answer no matter what you do, right? Like, you are hurting someone in this process, and there's no way around that. There just isn't. And for them to lie to him as a kid and try to make it seem like it's not a big deal, he knows what a big deal it is, and he can't answer the question, right? He just runs away. And I think the thing that is so clear is that he wants someone to chase him, and they don't, right? His parents don't chase him. He didn't make a choice. He didn't pick a parent. He couldn't do it. He just wanted them to stay together. And he runs away wanting to be chased, and they just trust him to go. They just let him go.
That's an
And
interesting take that I hadn't really considered because, I mean, obviously we do see at the end that his mom is completely moved. I mean, we see it halfway through the movie that she has moved on.
she's a whole new
She
life.
still
She's
cares
done.
about him, but like she's got another kid, like things are good. I hadn't really put that together that they don't seem to be searching for him as much as all the authorities are throughout this film.
I think that's the thing. Like, I ran away as a kid more than once, and I can tell you, you want someone to come after you.
Like a cry
right?
for help kind
It's
of
a
thing.
cry for help. It's attention grabbing. It is, I need you to see me, feel my pain, understand where I'm coming from, ask me the question, help me with the thing, whatever it is. You want someone to chase you.
Well, if you ever don't show up for pod recording day, I'm going to know what's happening.
You're going to have to chase me, and I will know you don't love me if you don't, But that's the thing. I think that's what he's going through, is that, like, nobody is chasing him. And so when Carl starts to chase him, it's the validation that he has been wanting that whole time. It is, I am important. I am worthy of being chased. I'm worthy of being caught. This man is paying attention to me. And he bonds with him in that way. And he wants him to keep chasing him until he kind of just gets tired. And he remembers that the thing that he was chasing the whole time is a family.
I wrote that down of, like, he just wants his parents back together.
Yeah.
Every time
he
runs
tells
into
you
his
it
dad,
over and over. Call mom.
Take this car. Go pick up mom. Yeah.
Go pick up mom. Get her a new outfit. Do this. I got you that. I got you this. He calls and he tells Carl to stop chasing him. He just wants to marry Brenda and have a new life with this new family. He remembers after years of this and being so tired that he just wanted a family. He just wanted his family to chase him. And now he has found a new family and he just wants to stop. And I think he kind of forgot in all the back and forth of, like, I've accomplished this, quote unquote. I've accomplished this, quote unquote, that he really just wanted a home, wanted a family, and wanted to commit to that. And he can't stop it. It's been now it's a runaway train. It's gone too far.
Yeah. Out of all the different cons in this, is there one that stands out to you as sort of the most fun to watch take place? I feel like the airline pilot at the beginning gets the most time because it's kind of his first step, and then they move quickly through the doctor, the lawyer piece. But is there one that stands out to you the most?
I think the airline pilot one is the sexiest, right? Like, what I think, this is what I'll say about each, right? Like, the airline pilot one is the sexiest one. It's supposed to grab you in, right? It also feels very harmless, right? Like, you see him literally asking for milk from the jump seat on his first flight. He's never been
not
on a
actually
plane.
flying the plane, which is
He's
good.
not flying the plane. He's never been in a plane, and his first experience is in the fucking cockpit. Like, imagine how much that would
That
blow
shot of
your
him,
mind.
like
Right. Him just like
holding
holding
on
it
for dear life. Yeah.
and asking for milk like the kid that he is.
Yeah.
But it is rooted in this like inherent sexiness of the era and being a pilot and all the ladies you can get and the suave nature that he starts to pick up. Like, he starts to realize his own sexuality and how much he can pull this off. And so I think that's the most fun to watch because you're watching him grow the most, like as a person into this persona. The doctor one is funny. I think it's the funnier one, but it is also the scarier one because you're like, oh shit, you're about to do real damage here. You could do
that one I
real
couldn't remember.
damage
This
here.
was only, I think, the second or maybe third time I've seen this movie, and I couldn't remember. I'm like, this one seems the most risky because you might get called in, and of course he
Right.
does. And thankfully,
Yes.
it's just, you know, not to say this poor kid with a broken leg, but you know, he
It's
just
not
gets
the
the
worst
opinions of
thing
the
that could have
yeah.
happened,
I thought he
right?
was going to get pulled in for like emergency surgery, and I was like, does he kill somebody? Is that how this ends?
Which, like, literally, there are people who have done this. There have been fake doctors or really terrible doctors. Like, just listen to Dr. Death, guys. Like, it's horrifying. But it tiptoes around that in a way that, like, it's still funny and it's rooted in this romantic story that you get. So you don't have to take it quite as seriously. And then the lawyer one is just farcical, I think. And I think that's the progression you're supposed to get, right? Of like, ooh, I can do this. This is sexy. This is fun. This is harmless. Ooh, this is funny, but a little bit scary. And then you get to this next one and you're like, this is some crazy bullshit. Like, this is outlandish. This is farcical. There's no way. And it's funny because that's the one that's rooted in any kind of truth that he supposedly actually passed the bar. And again, is indicative for the 13th time about this kid is smart. And if he just put his mind to something, he could really do it. So I think they all have something different, is what I would say. And I think they're important to the progression of the story.
Yeah, Janelle and I were talking about how the lawyer one, it's like the one time he can't completely bullshit people, where it's like lawyers know
I know.
bullshit. They can smell it from a mile
They
away.
can smell it from a mile away, and the judge fucking calls him out.
Why
and
are you doing this? The defendant isn't even
he's
sitting
like,
there.
there's no jury. There's just me. What the hell is wrong with you? I love that he calls him out.
It's a very good gag to see his confidence in prior to that of presenting everything, and then you
so
turn
great.
and it's like an empty room. That's pretty quality.
Totally. But you see no repercussions. Yet again, you see
Right.
no repercussions. It cuts to the family night where they're watching TV together. They're so wholesome and they're singing together. But you just see that he has like learned everything he needs to know from either of these jobs on TV.
Right.
And he can't execute them. And then you cut to, again, no repercussions, this family night where he's with his new family. And he like, he starts to sing along to the show, and he's just really leaning into the wholesomeness of that moment. And he's the oddball out. Like, he's still trying, but you can feel what an oddball out he is. But
At least thankfully it was like Disney sing-along songs. They had the lyrics on the screen for him so he could catch on eventually.
Oh, he caught on. He's like, and I love that they actually play him singing, and like, no shade, I'm sure Leonardo DiCaprio has a lovely voice, but he's like not supposed to sound good. Yeah. And you like hear his like wonky singing and their little, it feels very authentic is what I would say. But I have to sidebar here. I hate when grown ass people call their parents, oh God, I'm going to get us to 1 star today. When they call their parents daddy or mommy, like in real life, that bugs the shit out of me. And then on screen, it bugs the shit out of me. And she's calling him daddy. He calls his dad daddy. Again, naive little children, like it's a common theme. And then he fucking slaps his hand on his knee, and Amy Adams crawls onto his knee during that song. Yeah. And they like cuddle and do this. She's like, oh my God, daddy. And she's like welcomed back into the fold because some man has proposed to her. There are so many things about this thing that make me want to gag. I'm like, the daddy of it all, you're sitting on his knee, you're a grown-ass woman, you had an abortion that he made you have, by the way, but you're only an acceptable family member now because this con man conned his way into your family. That scene is just there's a lot to unpack in that scene for me.
It was a different time. We have to say that. It was a different time. You could sit on your daddy's lap whenever you wanted to. It wasn't okay, maybe it was. But they don't really, I am surprised with you laying it all out that way, that they don't really villainize the Martin Sheen character as much as they could. Like, it's just sort of like, oh, this happened,
like it could
but now we're a happy
there.
family. Yeah, and it never does.
It never does. Yeah, you do
Mm.
feel like it could go there, and they do try to make him like you're not sure if he has a read on him, and I like
You
that.
think
I
he
like
does
that
at
tension.
first,
Right.
and
I
you think
like that
he's
tension
this is too
build.
good to be true, but
Because of course
then
it's true, but this is where you know he still hasn't perfected his con
right.
manness because he's just trying to impress this guy and he just says yes to everything. And if he had said one thing differently, like, oh no, I'm actually not a Lutheran, I'm
Mhm.
Catholic, or like whatever the hell, it would be more authentic than you trying to pretend to be a Lutheran and just to fit into this family. And I think that again is like speaking to his actual relationship oriented desperation than
Yeah.
his con skills because he would rather get in with this family and that's more important to him than selling the character as well as he probably could have if he wasn't trying to just be everything that they wanted him to be. And yeah, you think that Martin Sheen is going to pick up on it a little bit. You get these tendrils of that. You almost want him to. And then he doesn't. He's just like, nope, love this guy. You're
Everything's great.
romantic just
Yeah.
like me.
Yeah, and then Tom Hanks shows up and ruins it. But and I love the line when he confesses everything to Amy Adams' character and like
Yeah.
gives her all the details. He's got the suitcase full of money. He's escaping through the window, and her just saying, "Wait, you're not Lutheran?" That line is pretty
I
quality.
know that is so again incidentally funny. He's great at incidentally funny where she's just like her takeaway from all of this is you're not Lutheran? What? And Lutherans are like famously really nice and friendly and accepting. So I thought that was kind of hilarious. Lots of
Yeah.
levels.
Before I don't want to go too quickly into sort of the climax. I wanted to backtrack a little bit and just say that like one of my favorite scenes in this is the hotel room where they first interact for the first time. Frank and Carl,
Oh, Carl. Yeah,
where
yeah.
he
I was
catches
like
him.
Jennifer Garner, which one? Because that's a
Yes,
fun scene
that's my
too.
favorite scene.
I
Um,
love that scene.
prostitution, but
Escort. She's an escort.
that's what
Get
it
it
is. She
right.
was in 17. Good for her. But yeah, when he catches him in the bathroom and just again that immediate confidence of how do I play this, and he walks out and sees the gun, compliments the gun,
But
pretends to
don't you just
be
want to shake him for letting him keep the wallet?
no, because I think that's the point, right? Is
I mean, I think it moves the
it's
plot forward.
gaining trust of like, hang on to it, I'll see you downstairs. Like I think it's part of the con.
I think it's a poorly executed con, personally, because there is such risk that the second he walks out of the room, he's going to look at it and then he chases you and catches you. And I think if you're really trying to escape, you genuinely need to get away and you need to allow any loose ends that could potentially catch you not be left behind. And I feel like
Mhm.
he took all of his supplies, right? He knew he needed these materials and I'm going to get this evidence where it needs to go. He knew he needed his materials and he needed to fucking book it. And he doesn't take the wallet, which is the only thing in the room that can give him away. And it would be perfectly reasonable to say, oh, yeah, thanks, man. Grab it, put it away. And you've bought yourself so much more time. So, I mean, maybe it is, again, trust building to your point, and I could see that, but I think it's poorly executed of like, you've built
It
some
would have
trust.
given him a longer fuse for escaping,
Yeah.
where
And I think
Carl
like
would be sitting up there
Carl could be
until
sitting up
somebody
there
comes out.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, he'd be like, man, LAPD is not here. It's been 20 minutes, like 30 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
It would just give him more of a lead and maybe make him question, like, is this, let me look around, let me dig further, let me like find more
Mhm.
evidence and it's all gone. So I think it's a very interesting thing. I think he has such again with the confidence, like he's a gun in his face, and he just keeps walking into the fucking room, and the guy's telling him freeze, freeze. He gives no explanation. He's just like, man, he's doing this, he's doing. He just starts going off, and that is a real like commitment to the bit to a almost detrimental degree because he doesn't know shit about Carl at this point. He doesn't
Right.
know whether or not this man will shoot him. And so I think it's also just a little bit indicative of the risks he's willing to take. So to that end, like maybe again with the wallet, like he's okay with living on the edge a little.
Yeah, going back to the invincibility of youth, right? You
Right.
just think, no, that there's a gun on me. No, there's nothing bad's gonna
No big
happen. I
deal.
can't die. I'm gonna live forever. But Have you, I guess I want to segue from that into my other favorite Carl moment. Have you heard any good knock knock jokes lately, Mackenzie?
Oh my God, this is also my other favorite Carl moment. I just love it. And I love when he re-delivers it later to his boss, who's like,
But
hey,
it cut,
don't
hard
don't let
cuts
this drag you
beforehand.
down. You could be
Yeah.
section chief. And he's like, would you like me to tell you a joke? Knock, knock. And it's so, and cut away. I love it. It's so funny. And I think it's so indicative of this person's character that he just
Mhm.
wants to catch the guy. Like, he's not being ambitious about it. He is, because he could. They've said, you wrote the book on check fraud, you wrote the book on bank fraud, rather, but you can be section chief if you want to. You're good to go. And he's like, no, I have to catch this guy. Like, that's the thing that he cares the most about. And I think it speaks again. We've talked about like what Frank needs. He needs to be chased. He needs people to care about him. He needs to win people over and get the con across and all of that. Carl needs an obsession. Carl needs a distraction. Carl doesn't have a family, right? Like, what he also is lacking family. And this is his life. This job is his life. This chase on the other end of it is also his life. And he has to chase this guy, and he has to catch this guy.
Yeah, it's a different type of ambition where he's not worried about moving up the ladder. He's
Right.
ambitious about
He has a
accomplishing whatever his
specific
goal is in his
goal.
head at
Yeah.
that time. And we get some of his backstory, and I kind of like that they leave it vague, but we do find out that he's estranged from his family. And I think that
Mhm.
ties into he's spending too much time on the job. He can't turn off all these sort of tropey stuff. And I'm glad we don't
Yeah.
have to directly address it as much.
Yeah, and I think, like, to your point, it's all about the goal, like you said. And then I also agree with you, and we talked about this a little bit in Jurassic Park, of not going too far into the character backstory, but giving you enough
Yeah.
that you understand the
Yeah.
motivations or you understand the interactions that are at play. And I think that's what they do with Carl very well, of like, I have enough information here to understand why he's motivated to do XYZ, and I can go with this. Like, I don't need a ton of detail. And I
Yeah.
like how he explains himself later too when this comes up.
You saying that made me think of how when they're on the plane and he asks him how he passed the bar exam for the first time, and he's like, "Give me the other half of that eclair," and he just
And he
houses
just
it.
houses
He's like,
it.
"I don't really fucking care that much. Like, you're not gonna
He's
have this. Is not. You're not
He's
gonna
like, I
call
already
me."
caught you,
Yeah.
okay? Like, I did the thing I was here to do. Like, yes, this would be a nice nugget, but no, you don't get my eclair. And I love, it's so funny you say that. That's one of my favorite moments. And also just his little like wink at the end when he does it, of like, he like really rubs it in. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
really like, this is delish. Yeah, the commitment to that I really like. I
Now,
also like with the two of them though, really quick, that I love the juxtaposition prior to him being caught of their lifestyles, right? Of like, this is a kid who is in a luxury hotel with a luxury
mhm,
car and the finest silks and money coming out of his ears and driving a red Cadillac and doing all these things. And he's having this beautiful experience. He's explaining to his dad why the salad fork is chilled, right? Like, this is a
mhm.
guy who's a man about town at this point. Cut to Carl in the laundromat with his clothes being turned pink by the red sweater of all the women around him who are there doing laundry, and he's the only guy because he's single and his wife isn't around and whatever. All the implications of that scene are subtle but so profound and so well juxtaposed against, what Frank's life is at this point.
It is cool to see those two back to back and to see them in the different stages of their lives and the way that they sort of mirror each other. Maybe not mirror isn't the right word, but when it comes to
Foil each
Christmas
other.
time, this kid who we think has this luxurious lifestyle is alone on Christmas and is calling this guy who's trying to catch him, to your point earlier. So,
Yeah.
and Carl calls that out of, you don't have anybody else to call. That's why you're calling me.
And it's funny, and he makes fun of him, but guess what? Neither does
Yeah,
Carl.
he's by himself too.
And that's the thing, I think, like, you see in other people the things that are true in you. And Carl sees in Frank their similarities and that they are both alone on Christmas, right? And so he recognizes that so easily and he rubs it in, but it's like, you like, turn that mirror around a little bit, buddy. Like, you're both in the same situation. You are foils of each other, but you have these like core things that are very similar, and why you're both on this ride together, basically.
Yeah, I think it becomes for sure sort of a maybe not father son dynamic, but there is something there for them, especially when we come to the ending and how they sort of end
Yeah.
up working together And even when he tries to run away again, he calls him out on it. He's just like, nobody's chasing you anymore. Why
Yeah.
would you run? You know?
Yeah.
So I do
Which
think
is saying
that
something
ties
because
in.
he has hung his reputation and all of
Right.
his favors on this guy coming out of prison. So I think he also has maybe a little bit of confidence in that maybe Frank has this drive and this innate need to be chased and all of these things. And if you just take away, it's like a bully, right? If you take the thing away that they want, the chasing, does it mean the same thing to them anymore? And are they
Right.
going to make the same decisions anymore? And I think he's figured out I can't keep chasing him because that's exactly what he wants. And that's why he comes back, I think. And he finds a new and different, very different life, and they become good friends, which is kind of something that I think flows nicely. You wouldn't necessarily assume that, but I feel like it works. It makes sense at the end of it all.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There's one component of not the very end, but the last 20, 30 minutes that I don't love, which is I feel like Frank spirals a little too quickly in the last 30 minutes of the movie. Like,
Oh, his like harried French
yeah,
Montrichard, like Prince
the
guy.
paper's going
Oh
everywhere.
yeah,
He's going bonkers. That feels
that's
like a
yeah.
cool scene, but I don't feel like that is earned as much.
That is the most disconnected to his character
Yeah.
he's ever been. I mean, I think that they were trying to show that he was starting to crack. There are subtle allusions to it earlier where he's calling Carl and saying, please stop chasing me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he is tired. He has a little bit of a breakdown with Brenda. There's that little segue of like, okay, a little nugget he's starting to crack. He has the thing at the airport where he's like ready to risk it all to go and escape with her, but she's not ready to go, and he's just on the edge. You do see these multiple moments where he's on the edge, and I think that is supposed to be, that moment in Montmarchard is supposed to be the culmination of all those miniature breaks, and this is his full-blown breakdown. But I agree, I think it is still like, if not 0 to 60, it's like 20 to 60.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like, ooh, that came quick and dirty. And I feel like, yeah, he's not quite to that level of breakdown. They're like, he's running out of money. How is he running out of money? Like, he has so much money that it feels, yeah, a little unearned, a little early for that, for sure.
Completely agree. And I think we've touched on, I think, all the other components of how this wraps up. The airplane escape sequence is fun. I love Carl climbing into the toilet, the hollowed out toilet opening, and like, Frank, like that part is a cool visual and kind of representative of this entire film. But then when he goes to his old home, and like sees his mom there, is it his old home?
It's his mom's new home with Jack. So it's not the same
Okay.
house, but it's the new home with Jack. And I think that's more painful. And yeah, he just is like, get me away from this. Like, I got to get out of here. And
Yeah.
it makes
It's the
sense.
one time he gives himself over so willingly. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like you're supposed to feel how heartbreaking that is for him too, right? To just see that he's been totally replaced. And I think it's supposed to bring you back to a place of sympathy for him, of like, don't forget that he was a kid. Don't forget that this was all predicated on the breakdown of his family. Don't forget
Mm-hmm.
that his family really didn't come for him and just moved on. And they did.
Or
And
even adding to that of who his dad was, at least according to this iteration. It's like, oh, would I have grown up differently if I had a different father with the same
yeah,
mom? This kid seems to be doing just
right.
fine.
What would have happened if Jack Barnes was his dad and
Right.
not Frank, right? Like there is something to that, right? This house is stable. That man is truly a lawyer. Like, they have a kid and they're safe and secure and all these things. And I think it's the almost of that
Yeah,
is very hard for him to see and feel. And I think you're supposed to feel that with him and with them.
I'd agree.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's still just, even with all the annoyance on rewatch of the things that we have been conned into believing were real
Yeah,
cons, so to speak. It still holds up as just like a great film, a fun watch, incredible performances. All that to say, what is your rating?
this is the rare occasion where I'm going to make you go first because I'm very curious to see where you fall.
I hate going first. That's why I always ask
I know,
you.
but you feel much more strongly on this one than I do.
Um, I do. I think I really did struggle, like I said, on rewatch with the inaccuracies of it all. Because as you know more than most, I like deep dive research all the things that I watch. So I did that again, and that was hard. So I didn't enjoy it as much. Like I said, the thing I felt the most this time though was the drag of it. I think there are some pacing issues here. I think that's
Yeah.
true across the film, regardless of whether or not the content is real. I think there's some pacing issues. Talking it through reminded me of some of the themes to the story that I think are very well executed, actually, and the way the characters are played off of each other and the sentimentality of the story, and like is very Steven Spielberg for me too, of like
Yeah.
these are the kinds of stories he likes to tell, and he does them really well. So I think it kind of redeemed it for me as well. So I think I would probably land at like a 7.5.
Okay. Well, okay.
Maybe leaning 8. Like, I still think it's a really good movie. I wish I didn't know all the other shit, and I think I would maybe even go higher because it's a really good time.
Okay. I'm surprised you came in that low because I thought I was going to come in low, but you said something and it made me think talking about this movie is kind of more interesting to me than watching the movie. And I'm not saying that to say it's a bad movie.
No.
But hearing some of your theories and talking about sort of the family aspects and different made it more interesting. But I still I can't get over, even if I were to watch this and assume it's 100% fiction, false, and watch it and just see the entertainment value, I do think something's taken away, to your point of the slowness of this. That, to me, knowing that it's true makes that more acceptable. If I know that it's all made up and you can make it as interesting as you want, just fucking tell me he invented jetpacks at some point. He's flying around the jetpack. That'd be awesome. We get a little monster sequence with Godzilla.
Spielberg didn't know that it wasn't true. Like, we got to remember that.
I know. Again, I'm not going to hold that against him. So when I first saw this, I would probably have given it like an 8. It's not a perfect film, but it was highly enjoyable. I'm going to drop it to 7, just knowing what I do know. And like, I don't particularly want to rewatch. I might rewatch this at some point in my life, but
I'll totally rewatch this. I think, well, let me rephrase. If I didn't know all of that, I would rewatch this over and over. I've seen this movie a million times. I love it. But yeah, now can I rewatch it without thinking through all that? I don't know. That's a great question. But yeah, that's like, we're closer than we thought. I think, like, again, on first watch, I would have, probably easily given it an 8, 8.5, which I think is in line with reviews at the time.
Right.
All right, guys. Well, I think the moral of the story is this is still a really great movie. And if you don't dissect it for Jesus like we just did, then you probably will have a great time. Just watch it as fiction. Just watch it.
The moral of the story was don't fucking lie. Or actually, you'll probably have a great time, apparently. You'll be a millionaire.
I was going to say, you can have like a really solid run, actually, if you lie. But it won't last, though. It won't last.
And you won't have a family.
You won't have a family, except your FBI bro. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Come back next week for more Spielberg fun. We're going to be switching gears a little bit. I think we keep switching gears, which I like with his filmography, like we said. We're going to do Hook next week.
Oh, boy. Another 90s classic, right?
I think so. I think
Early
it's 90s, right?
Yeah.
Robin Williams makes an appearance. It's a good time. I highly recommend watching before the ep if you get a chance, because it's a good one. It's a fun one.
Yeah. And in the meantime, you can follow us on our socials. We drink and we watch things. Instagram, TikTok. You can now watch us with video on YouTube, Spotify. Give us some subscribes, some comments. We're already getting some. Appreciate that.
We were getting so many little comments on YouTube, and I started a poll. I don't even know if you saw this. I did a poll on our Spotify app, and we got some responses. And yeah, so thanks for engaging, guys.
Yeah, if you guys keep watching and commenting on YouTube, I might get a fancier ring light and some more interesting outfits. We'll see.
Yeah, tell him to up his outfit game, y'all. I try to dress on theme, and this kid does not meet me where we're at.
I'm still rocking like a Halloween shirt.
I had my thesaurus shirt for Jurassic Park. Like, come on. Get Lamar to step up his game, y'all. No, I'm just kidding. We're having a great time. Thank you for joining us and being with us. And for now, go have a drink and watch a thing. Cheers.
Cheers.